Greetings and welcome back to the Brockton Bay Chronicles. My name's Keith. Thanks for joining us as my good friend Andy continues his first time read of Worm by Wildbow. What's up, Andy?
Well, happy to get through Thanksgiving with a minimum of family drama, plenty of good eats. So that was very nice. And we still got one slice of pecan pie left. So still living the dream there. But yeah, starting to transition toward Christmas. Got to get the decorations up this weekend because there's a local event going on that goes by our house, and we're expected to
Participate a little bit?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
So it's always fun. But let's get to the matter at hand here. We will be reviewing Arc 19, Scourge, chapters 4 to 6. And for new business, I believe we have some questions and comments.
Yes, we do. We've got some comments and questions from some of our regular contributors, plus a new person chimed in. And we will start off with this comment from Johannes E. And Johannes says, I think they are only mentioned by name in the chapter tags, but all of the clones, or at least collectively all clones from the same cape, actually have a canon name that is kind of funny, as they're all just puns of the characters they're based on. They're all listed in the wiki. Would be a fun side thing to list them all and see what you think of them. I did grab out a few names and thought I'd toss them out at Andy. And for the Gru clone, the name was Abhorror. And for the Skitter clones, two of them was Chitter and Scurry. I think those were the flying bugs and the crawling bug tag team. And okay. For the Regent clone, there was, I believe this is pronounced Vizier. I'm not sure about that because I ain't French. I think that's French. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure I didn't dig deep on the wiki, but yeah, it was a fun thing to find out that they did all have their own individual names. Any quick comments on that revelation?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, Vizier is correct on that, at least from what I've heard it before.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm remembering my second year French class
nice.
from college, but yeah, that's pretty amazing. I've been trying to do some writing, and coming up with names is a real challenge. And so if all the clones had their own names, that's kind of mind blowing. Very cool.
And actually, question for the for our listeners: are these clone names from the fandom, or are they names that Wildbow actually gave them? Because I don't know. Maybe I'll ask Tony that. But yeah, pretty cool stuff. Again, pretty deep world we're dealing with here as far as Worm goes. Moving on to another comment from Johannes E. As far as the Manton effect is concerned, Weld hit the jackpot. His inorganic body means he is unaffected by powers that target biological matter, and the fact that he is still a living, thinking being means he is unaffected by powers that target inanimate matter. So, with any cape with a Manton effect limitation, chances are they're not going to affect Weld at all. Skitter couldn't have asked for a better rescuer. Good point, Johannes. I didn't consider that even during the second read. I did not think about the Manton effect as far as how it would impact or keep other capes from impacting against Weld. I think I just kind of looked at the situation where, oh, yeah, okay, well, Echidna can't absorb him, and great, he's in there being able to rescue people without, I looked at it that way without thinking about how the Manton effect played into it. What you think about that comment, Andy?
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it either, but it's like a knife with a brain or something,
Yeah.
He's just slicing and dicing in there. It's pretty amazing. And that's, yeah, Skitter hit the jackpot with that for sure.
And actually, that kind of prompts me to think of something. As we look at the world that Wildbow's built here, the Manton effect kind of hangs over things not unlike the Prime Directive, perhaps in a similar kind of vein.
Oh, it's interesting.
I mean, it's there.
Yeah,
It hangs over the story. It's affecting things, but it's not something that you think about until it comes to the fore. Much as the Prime Directive is there, in Star Trek, but you don't really think about it being there until it comes to the fore.
yeah, I think that is a good analogy or a good comparison. I was focusing more on the kind of physical aspects of it, I guess, but just that it's kind of a undercurrent, if you will.
You know what? That's the way to look at it. Yeah, thank you.
Then yeah, it is always kind of there in the background, and yeah, sometimes it crops up, and you're like, oh, geez, that's right, that's in effect. So yeah, I like that. That's a good comparison.
Now we hear from Megafire 7. I always read Echidna's powers as essentially inducing alternate versions of the Cape's trigger events in order to give the clones powers. As far as Taylor's interaction with Aisha goes here, this is the first time, I think, that Aisha felt seen and respected as a full member of the team, having finally gotten a legitimate choice and a say in how the team operates. I think that's what helped her accept Taylor as her leader. Also, Bonesaw somehow gets worse every time she shows up, which is quite impressive. I'll say. Yes. I mean, okay, we know that Bonesaw put in physical enhancements to herself and the rest of the members of the Nine, but the whole Borg. Did you see Star Trek First Contact?
Oh yeah,
The
yeah.
Borg Queen. She goes,
yeah.
yeah. So that's the image I'm drawing there, and I mean, except for poor Blasto was an unwilling conscious participant in that whole marriage.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going further back. It reminded me of the different scenes from John Carpenter's The Thing, where every time the alien did something, you're like, oh, that's so gross. It's just horrible. And then the next thing was like, oh, that's even more gross.
That's
and
true.
Then, like the dude's head sprouts legs and starts crawling across the floor. You're like, oh, hell no. That's just give me the flamethrower. I want to.
Yep. It's a thing. I never saw that in the theater. I should have. Yeah, man. Caught it on VHS. I think it was the first time I saw it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it probably came out when we were in high school. So
Late
it may 70s, have been, it may have been that we weren't old enough to see it in the theaters.
True.
Not that my little theater in my podunk town cared. They just let anybody in that was paying, but my parents scared, so I didn't get to routinely go to those movies.
What were your thoughts? I was going to bring up the comparison that Megafire was making about how Aisha was handling Taylor's role as leader and how we saw some real growth here in this moment.
I think that's spot on. If you think about any of your friends or whatever that you hung out with that had a younger sibling, and how, if you played sports or even just hide and seek or whatever. And then, it was always, we got to wait for the little one, and oftentimes that made the younger kid pretty resentful and obnoxious. But then there'd be that time where they finally could participate, or they did something kind of mind blowing that you weren't expecting, because you had him pigeonholed as the little kid. And then all of a sudden, it changed the whole dynamic, and you're like, you looked at them differently, they looked at their role in the group differently, and all of a sudden a lot of the obnoxious kind of evaporated.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, we hear from a new contributor, Henry Fire. Great rundown on this section, guys. I love that you appreciated Blasto in his brief appearance. I wish you would touch on his fleeting thought of heroism as he considered that sacrificing himself is worth it in order to rid the world of someone as horrific as Bonesaw. Loved that moment. Fully agree, Henry Fire, and thanks for contributing. Pretty sure this is the first time we heard from you. Hope it won't be the last. Yeah, I didn't give that moment full appreciation, I don't think. I think in my first read, I was probably uncertain how to feel about Blasto. I think he kind of gave me the creeps. But taking a deeper look at that moment where, yeah, any of us, I guess, in that situation would be, we talking about the fight or flight instinct, or is this more of a intellectual thing by Ray saying, you know what, I would accept giving up my own life to keep this murderer, this person from living. What do you think, Andy?
I hadn't really considered it either. I was really caught up in geeking out a little bit about if I was somebody like that getting access to that kind of data, and just, yeah, kid in the toy store kind of thing, just, oh my gosh, here we go. What could I do? Oh, this is so cool. And then, there is definitely the aspect of the creepiness of it, kind of like the movie The Fly, where he's experimenting with teleportation and stuff. And then he starts getting all freaky, and you're just like, all right, this isn't going the way I thought it was going to go. But yeah, Ray's there playing with fire mixed with dynamite, with radioactive material all together, kind of, and you're just like, oh my gosh, this could go so wrong. And then, like, the worst psychopath ever shows up, and he's like, all right, I might be willing to take her out just because,
Yeah.
What I'm thinking of is bad, but at least I was drawing a line, and I don't think she draws a line ever. I don't know if she even has a pencil. And so it would have been cool if we had focused on that a little bit more, I guess. But I think it was just Wildbow and his description of how it went just kind of overrode everything else. And it was just, like one of those horrible crises on television or something where you want to look away, but you can't look away. And kind of pushed out all their thoughts for me, where it's like, oh no, is that really happening? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because there was a lot going on in that moment. Defiant is caught up in Bonesaw's improvised containment foam. Bonesaw's in pieces, or is that may be before he hacked her? I may be misremembering the chain of events, but that didn't spur to the front of my brain at all. It was, hey, how's Defiant going to get out of this? My goodness, what are we going to do with Bonesaw? What's she here for, kind of thing. So I'm glad Henry Fire brought that up.
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We appreciate the comments and the questions. Please keep them coming. And with that, we will be moving on to our review, starting off with Chapter 4. And, I don't know if Scapegoat is all of us at this moment, but I'm sure he's a lot of people as he's going through this litany of, okay, I thought this was overblown, and then I got here and saw it was this way. And it's like, okay, well, this echidna thing, okay, unusual parahuman. And he just kind of rolls through all the stuff that he was willing to accept right up until the point where the superpowered thinker just completely shatters his world.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of folks on that same page, and I can relate. I grew up near the border of Mexico, and we were told never drive your car down there, because if you get in an accident or something, all the red tape and the corruption that could be involved with the police and the insurance, you may not get your car back, all this kind of stuff. And I was a kid, I'm like, oh, this is just totally overblown. There's not that kind of heavy-handedness or whatever. And then, one time we were down there and we'd left our car on the other side. We were going from one store to another, just walking along. And all of a sudden this army truck full of federales rolled up and basically took apart these people's house. They were just tearing it down, thinking something was going on. I'm like, oh my gosh. We didn't see anybody get their rights read to them or anything. It was just like, we're here, we're going to do what we want. And I was like, oh, wow, this is as bad as everybody was saying it was. Yeah, I'm glad that, we're just walking here. Let's not look at them or anything. Pretend we don't see it. So, yeah, I think I can totally relate. And Scapegoat is spot on here that, oh my gosh, I had no idea it could be as bad as I thought it, some people were saying, but it's worse.
Yes. We've got a brief break, right? This is where Tattletale and Miss Militia brought Coil's old base down on top of Echidna. Tattletale is trying to offer a way home or figure out a way home for the travelers. Skitter's going to go and gather up Atlas. She wants to go get Atlas. She wants to see if anybody else needs any other supplies. She knows that she needs to have Scapegoat with her, so they make arrangements to ferry him with her. And the team heads off in the different directions. You feeling all right with this particular moment where we've got some downtime and the teams are regrouping?
Yeah, I don't know. I kind of went back and forth with this. As the people who listen to this podcast in the past know, I'm definitely a nuclear option kind of guy. And, my temptation is just, have one of the superpowered flying capes just pick up everybody in a boat and fly them out or something, and then Brockton Bay is a loss. Just pave it over, turn it into a sea of glass with Echidna underneath it. But I do have to jump back a little bit, and I love this this line by Regent where Tattletale's trying to lay out her thing here, and she says it might need a human sacrifice, and Regent nudged me with Gru gone, it's your job to lay down the law. No human sacrifices. That one got me. It's like, oh yeah, I guess did we have that in our bylaws? Was that part of I forget. Yeah, what were our rules of engagement? No human sac. I guess we said that.
Yeah, but then he points out to Skitter, you're not saying no.
Right.
What is she thinking here at this moment? I mean, okay, we later on we find out what her thinking was at this point. I wish I could define whether or not this instance is a case of that phrase, the unreliable narrator, where the protagonist, the person whose head we're inside of, is keeping something from us. I probably should have gone back and looked that up just to see if that could be, see if that's accurate in this moment,
Well, I think one thing that it's easy for me to forget about is Skitter's strategist powers or her thinker powers. And, she might have some kind of intuition here, and we kind of gave Pigo a hard time about it, but there's the whole acceptable losses thing, right? That, you have to weigh what's the worst eventuality. And as we'll see later, Echidna keeps getting worse and worse. And some of the stuff that Skitter might have had in mind because of how her brain is kind of analyzing the cloning possibilities. And we've seen the Gru clone, and Abhorrer be able to come up with teleportation. It's like, oh, all right. If other clones keep getting these unaccounted for powers or things we weren't predicting, then things could get way out of hand really fast. And it almost happens that way. And so
you think she's doing the math in her head about whether or not the sacrifice thing may be the better option, legitimately so.
I'm thinking maybe she has some kind of intuition or something. Yeah, maybe it's a subconscious thing or something, but I got a book. It's been around for a while, and actually my son read it in school. It's called Blink, and it talks about like intuition and that kind of thing. And the example they gave was like a very simplified gambling game. And people who weren't gamblers, it took them a while to catch on what was going on, but eventually they figured it out. But people who were gamblers picked it up like 5 times as fast, and they couldn't even articulate what they figured out. but like their hands sweated, their heart rate went up, and they knew that there was some underlying system going on, and then they started working that system without even being able to really understand what it was, to be, say what it was. And
Really?
so I'm thinking maybe it was something like that. Yeah, it's really
Mhm.
cool.
And what's this called again?
The book is called Blink.
Okay. You're always pulling out these ones I'm wondering about, dude. Arrangements are made. Gully and Wanton are going to go with Skitter and Bitch to go fetch Atlas. And we get one of those instances where Skitter is kind of in her swarm. She's exhausted also. She nods off a couple of times. We get that several moments throughout the section that we're covering tonight. And then we know the big moment during the battle later on, but where she allows herself just to be in her swarm, more swarm and less Skitter. Is that going to be an ongoing thing, you think?
Well, I could see that it would be, as she gets more and more comfortable with processing the different bands of input that she's getting from the swarm, and as she might be in more and more high stakes situations, if that's possible. It might be good to change perspective like that. Well, it's like computers. You've got sequential processing or parallel processing, and some things work better, are solved more easily with one than the other, and then the opposite can be true. And so, I think of the swarm sense as more parallel processing,
Mm-hmm.
and could be good to get, especially for somebody like her, a master strategist, to get those different perspectives. Just like people trying to predict the weather, or look at wind patterns and also humidity. You get
Sure.
different measurements and stuff, and that gives you a clearer picture.
All right. You can admit it. Did you cheer when she picked up Atlas?
I I don't know. I felt I kind of felt like, it was one of those scenes where some dude's been in prison for 15 years and is really nice. A Plymouth Roadrunner has been sitting getting dusty in a weird garage somewhere,
Oh yeah, I see.
and he's there clearing it off, and you're like, wow, is it even going to start? Is it, are they going to have to drain the fluids and
Right.
get a new battery and stuff? I feel a little bad for Atlas. It's been hanging out. It looks like he's had a little bit of a rough time.
Yeah, it does make sense. I think her speculation was sound that it was probably Coil moving Atlas over to some clandestine location in order to keep the Undersiders from realizing, that whole plan might have fallen
Right.
apart if faux Skitter couldn't climb on Atlas and ride him. So
Right.
I think her speculation on that was sound.
For sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. But yeah, I just the way she described it was, did they put him in the back of a pickup? How did they?
Uh-huh.
It's like, well, it kind of reminded me of the Men in Black with the
Mm-hmm.
giant cockroach on the truck of the exterminating team.
Sure. Yeah. They pick up Atlas and they head back to the site of the fight. Uh, you know, Tattletale, I don't know if I was irritated with her, but something's going on with her. I mean, the last time she was this reckless, if you want to use that word, I think might have been when she was talking smack and Jack Slash cut her face.
Mm. Yeah, it's
Is
part of
reckless
her.
the right way, or I mean, she is a villain. Sometimes we forget that.
Good
Okay,
point.
and she may have schemes going on now. Okay, maybe that's not. Maybe I don't want to come across as leading you. What do you think? Okay, let me put it to you that way. Is she being reckless or is she scheming?
Um, I thought of it as scheming. It's
Okay.
like when back when we used to play flag football, you keep running out patterns until you see the cornerback ready to bite, and then you
Mm-hmm.
do it down, out, and up.
Sure.
And dude's left there holding his jock, and you got
Mm-hmm.
a touchdown. So it's almost like some of her power depends on prodding people or goading people, or you see it sometimes in like detective shows or wherever, where they're trying to make somebody crack, or on the witness
Right.
stand, where they're trying to make them break through their stony exterior or whatever. So it seems like that more than like it's a calculated risk, I guess, is what I'm
Okay.
saying, rather than just flat out reckless. But the other thing that we forget all the time, or at least I do, is that, these are basically teenagers. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, I can vividly remember being a teenager and thinking, oh, I know everything that's going on.
Of course. It's
And
in the
being like,
teenager
oh,
handbook, man. We're all like that.
it's when they swear you in as a teenager, you're
Yeah.
required to say that I do know everything. Yes, that's true. And so there could be some of that operating too. It's hard to, I know these people have been in a pressure cooker and have probably way more mature than their chronological age. But even when you've been through that, stuff can crop up that, and all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, that was a bonehead teenager thing to do right there.
Two things I want to mention so we don't forget them. I love Miss Militia being, I mean, she wasn't putting up with any smack from Tattletale. She straight up threatened her. And then also throughout this thing, we get Wildbow reminding us that Skitter is running on just, no sleep and straight up adrenaline because she's been awake for however many hours. No temporal healing from Scapegoat can take away from that fact. But we can talk about those. I just wanted to put them out there so we didn't forget about them as we went along. Miss Militia is taking this situation deadly seriously. She smacks Tattletale and sticks a gun in her mouth. As far as she's concerned, Tattletale is going to say something that is going to possibly wreck the truce and then render the situation completely lost.
That was a little over the top for me.
Yeah.
To see somebody on the good guy side do the whole, like flat out mafia type thing or whatever that you see in movies is just like, whoa, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand that she needed to shut her up, but I guess I figured it'd be more of like a chokehold or something, where you keep them from talking. It was like, dang. I mean, you don't want it to be one of those Pulp Fiction things where a kid that jars the ground a little bit, all of a sudden Tattletale's gone. I mean, that's pretty it's a little too close, kind of too close to the bone for me. So I was a little shocked at that, actually, from Miss Militia. But I mean, I think Rachel got the point.
Yeah, Rachel and Regent were ready to back up their teammate, but they both acquiesced when Skitter put hands on them to get them to slow their roll.
Yeah.
So Mirden comes over. Was it Mirden or Chevalier both come over and are like, hey, what are you doing, Miss Militia? Yeah, Chevalier's like, I don't want to second guess what you're doing here, and you're in charge because it's your town, unless the triumvirate, because they outrank you. But why are you jamming a gun in this girl's mouth? And Miss Militia tells him, look, yeah, she's got some important information to share, but this isn't the time to discuss it. Skitter tries to salvage the situation, tries to reason with the heroes to get them to, step aside and say, hey, look, I can take you over there to this place. We can talk. I can give you the info a little more diplomatically than what Tattletale was going to do. You can see how you want to disseminate it to your subordinates. And that's where we run into trouble because Gully, she doesn't want to play ball. She's like, hey, no, I want to hear what's going on here because this could tell me why I look this way. Why am I a monster?
Well, and weld backs are up,
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of folks that have been, looking a long time trying to get answers to these things. And now they're they're on the brink of learning some stuff, and it's just like this heavy-handed, no, we're not going to let you know kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, screw that. I mean, we have the information right here that we've wanted to know all this time,
In a
and you're not going to stop us from finding it out.
in a fairly short period of time, it seems like Wildbow has done a good job of making us care about Gully.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising. She's only been in for a couple of readings here, and all of a sudden, but she had been passed over. She's been a hard worker. She's
Mm-hmm.
done everything that's asked of her. And I think we can all relate to that, if not the actual physical attributes or anything, but we've all been in a position, I think, where we feel like we've got the short end, and we don't know why. And we start to question, well, is it something about me, or, am I, what's going on? And so, in those situations, thinking back, if someone had told me, well, I can tell you why, then I'd be like, yeah, tell me. And if somebody said, no, he can't know, I'd be right there with Gully saying,
Right.
yeah, screw that, spill it.
And then again, after Miss Militia takes the gun out of her mouth, and we have that dramatic scene where Gully and Weld are like, no, you're going to tell us because we're here in our capacity. I guess that's probably not the best word, but we're here as case 53s, and we want to know for all the other case 53s. You can't continue to hide this. And then Tattletale's had enough of it because the ground is rumbling, and clearly Echidna is on the move some kind of way under the ground. And she has another dramatic moment where she goes up to Miss Militia, puts the gun to her head, and says, "Pull the trigger. I don't care, either that or just let me talk." Another moment from Tattletale that was kind of scary.
Yeah, but just the same way that Miss Militia put the gun in her mouth to make a point, I think Tattletale was just trying to hit home
Mm-hmm.
that this is how important this is. You think it's this important that it doesn't get out, but I think it's this important that it does get. And she's willing to die for it. And it seemed like she was just being reckless, and Miss Militia called her bluff, but now it's looking like it wasn't a bluff.
Yeah. So we've got this drama above ground playing out at the same time that Lord knows what's going on underground, and these two storylines are running parallel for the moment and threatening to collide. Legend comes down. So, right, yeah, the Triumvirate showed up. We knew Eidolon was there, but Legend and Alexandria are on the scene now as well. And he comes down and he tells a tale. Now, we as readers question that credibility of the yarn he spins, but he spins enough of a good story that it seems to placate everyone, well, except Tattletale, and Skitter sends a bug her way, and it's like, yeah, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, it's definitely trying to paint a picture that makes the cat's out of the bag,
Right.
but it doesn't have rabies,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have 3 heads. It doesn't shoot lasers out of its eyes. It's just a cat. And so let's all be cool. We knew something was in the bag, and it's just a cat. Relax. And yeah, Tattletale knows that, okay, he's covering that up. It's something horrible with a cat suit on. But Skitter says, all right, let's just let him get away with it for now. You got it partially out in the open.
Right.
Let's not. You set the dynamite in the room, but it hasn't been lit yet. So let's not light the fuse right now. Everybody knows the dynamite's there. Yeah, in fact, Wildbow uses the cats out of the bag.
Yeah, in that moment, they use Manton. They throw him and a secondary person who may have been selling formulas that they got from Manton, and they must have run out. So we don't see any more Case 53s showing up. That was kind of the story that Legend put out there for people. And I did like that as we're moving to the end of the chapter where once Legend flies back up to Alexandria and Eidolon, and she and Skitter can tell from the bugs that she put on them that he kind of nodded his head slightly toward the others. And it says here, if I'd been suspecting that he'd been lying before, that clinched it for me. In his shoes, I wasn't sure I wouldn't have done the same thing.
Well, it's tough, right? I mean, we've seen it in like war movies where some horrible thing comes out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, well, yeah, that's really bad and super important. But right now, we have something that's just as bad or worse and is important and urgent. It has to be dealt with right now. And so sometimes the other important but not as urgent stuff has to go on the back burner.
Yeah, I don't want to blow past the way that Echidna got out. She used her teleporting Gru, and she had partially dug her way out. He climbed out and then used his darkness to teleport her to the surface. And then the fight's on, and we're moving on into chapter 5. Oh gosh, this very exciting chapter. Lots of drama going on. And Skitter is ups her game. She's really, man, her powers probably expanded. She's directing, using her bugs to direct capes to different locations. She's talking to people. Just a lot going on, and not difficult to follow. Wildbow wove the story pretty well. It was easy to stay in tune with everything that was going on, I think.
I think so, yeah. The one thing I wish that there'd been a little bit more impact of the exhaustion, because, there are definitely cases where people have gone for a long time, fought through a lot of stuff, and kept going. But I think it would have been, not that this story is quote unquote realistic, since it's, but that Skitter had faded out at times or something, and had to shake herself back awake. The other side of that, though, is that oftentimes when we are kind of sleep deprived, it frees our mind a little bit, right? Where we don't have the conscious control as much because we're too tired to keep exerting that. And so different things can come up, different ideas, different ways of doing things. And so I think it would have been cool to try to weave that in there in some way.
Well, are we getting that sort of in, I think, several times during this chapter, and I think the next one, where Skitter is using, as she put it, the composite vision of her swarm. I caught that this time through, and I was kind of thinking to myself, maybe it's, she's using her swarm vision, for lack of a better phrase, and is painting a mosaic that's easier for her to deal with rather than trying to see specifically through the eyes of a dragonfly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I could see that.
So piggybacking on the point you were making about her the normal walls being up in some of her consciousness, her fatigue allowed those walls to drop, and now she's a little more able to pick up on some of the things, like her swarm vision.
Yeah, I could see that. That brings up some other interesting possibilities. So and I don't know enough about like hive mind and that kind of thing, but big part of exhaustion is just that the single brain of the person has been running too long. And so if she's really part of more of a network of brains, given that the vast majority of them are tiny brains compared to ours, it still might kind of spread out the load a little bit. I don't know. And, somehow she's borrowing the computation power a little, or besides the actual senses.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And that may be something that I should know, or that's something that gets addressed later on. We shall see. Immediately after Echidna shows up with the teleporting Gru, we do get a pretty good scare because the containment van that Scapegoat is in, gets dematerialized, and Skitter has to kind of anticipate where she thinks it's gonna rematerialize, and she guesses right. Unfortunately, this teleportation did not interrupt Scapegoat's power, because that could have been just a disaster.
Yeah, and this is one part where I think Wildbow did kind of talk about the exhaustion.
Mm-hmm.
She blinked a few times to see if she had gone blind again. And it's that kind of thing where it's like, well, yeah, her eyes were probably, I think somebody said at one point, like, they're putting a microwave, but they've got to be so gritty and worn out that she thinks, oh, well, she misinterprets how she's feeling to, oh, maybe Scapegoat is out of range or whatever. But it turns out that part's okay. Like you said, she anticipated it, but
yeah,
everybody's been spread out. They kind of had like this attack plan, and now, somebody's turned on the giant leaf blower, and they've all been blown down the road, and now they got to try to come back and be ready to go.
Yeah, a couple of things. We do get to see the Triumvirate in action as a team, and that was awesome. And we do get to see throughout this section of the battle the gamer mentality of Noelle, and it's nip and tuck for a while. It's back and forth. We get Legend firing laser beams all over the place. We get Skitter effectively acting as the PA system for the entire battlefield. That was a neat trick. Now,
yeah, I like that. And that's classic Skitter. It's like, all right, we've got all these super heavy hitter people here, so even if I had every insect on the planet, I probably wouldn't be doing the same kind of damage. And we've seen how Noelle just turns the bugs against her anyway, so there's only so much she can do, but she finds a way to make an impact and to really help. And at times it's super helpful. That's the only way that sometimes people are reluctant to kind of take her direction, but at least she's providing some direction, and people start realizing that it is helpful. She is providing good information and good ideas.
So I'm thinking here. Let's see if this is a good question to ask you at this point. So I want to compare. I want you to compare the two, Leviathan versus now. And is this a better scene for you, or did you prefer the Leviathan fight? Can you see any growth as far as the way Wildbow did these? I think that's the question I'm trying to ask.
I don't know if
that may not be a fair way to phrase it, though, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think of them quite differently, I guess.
Okay.
With Leviathan, it was right off the outset, they said 25% of us at least are going to die. And it was just there was this feeling of inevitability. They knew what they were dealing with. They knew how bad it could be, and that it was super bad. With Noelle, there's some doubt that, and the underside had been struggling with that the whole time, trying to get people to realize how bad this could get. And so I think there's still, even at this point, some it's bad, but it's just like, we fought a really big spider last time, and now we've got 10 big spiders. So it's 10 times as bad, but it's not Leviathan bad yet. So it's kind of two different styles, I guess, if you will.
Okay.
But it seems like as it progresses, people start realizing, all right, this is maybe worse. It's just that it doesn't start out that way. It doesn't have that feeling of just impending doom right off the bat that the Leviathan had.
Right, right. Because Noelle is kind of an, as you're alluding to, she's an unknown element.
Well, and she's still Noelle in there somewhere, right? So
Hmm.
there's this feeling that, all right, well, she's just not gonna, she's not a flat out like animal or a non-human that like an alien that we can't understand at all. There's still a person in there, and so there's things that we can say are off the table, maybe.
Hmm.
Like with Leviathan, it's like a force of nature, right? Like a hurricane. The hurricane doesn't care if it wipes out all of New Orleans. It's not,
Right.
it's just going to do its thing. And I felt the same way with the Leviathan fight. It's just going to do whatever it's going to do. Whereas with Noelle, I guess I just have in the back of my mind that at some point she's not going to like try to ingest every living and breathing thing in the Brockton
Yeah.
Bay metropolitan area and grow to the size of I don't know, the state of Rhode Island or something.
Hmm.
At some point she's gonna be like, all right, that's I've gone too far. And I don't know if that's legit, but I think that was in the back of my mind.
Yeah. Okay. I see that. That helps me. That helps me. And also, whereas Leviathan is, as you were saying, Leviathan's indiscriminate. Noelle does have a goal. Ultimately, she's still about revenge.
Right. Good point.
So the as the battle progresses, we get some cool scenes in there. We get Chevalier using his cannon blade, which I'm sorry, just sounds like an awesome weapon. And we get Mirrodin before he is sadly struck down, using his wizarding skills. Lots of capes, lots of powerful capes making meaningful contributions. And for a moment, it looks like they may be able to pull this off. It looks that way until it until it's not. The use of the duplicator, you don't see what's coming until it's too late. Did you see that coming? I mean, one moment Skitter and Weld are battling a duplicator, and the next thing you know, we've got four echidnas sitting out there.
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming at all. But I definitely feel like after it happened, I should have. It's kind of like Echidna is just cloning whatever she can, and each
Mm-hmm.
one is like a roll of the dice. What powers are going to come out, and then finally, it's like, oh, I can really use this one, and then it's just like, oh my gosh, somebody please tape her mouth shut before that thing gets over there. But yeah, everybody has just been, and it's like you said, it's nip and tuck, right? They make a little headway. Noelle makes a little headway,
Mm-hmm.
and something goes well, and then something goes south, and so they're focused on just trying to get there, and they don't realize they're careening toward this cliff, and that just trying to avoid the obstacles on the way isn't enough. You got to be able to recognize that's coming, and they miss it, and then yeah, all of a sudden we got wait, instead of one of these, now there's four of them, and one of them was almost kicking our butt. So yeah, this is bad.
Very much so. I do want to know if there is any fan art of that image of Weld, Atlas, and Skitter in a that fighting position when they were taking on
Mm.
the clones. Because I got this mental image, but I don't know if anybody's done any fan art of that trio as they're poised for battle. Atlas with his pincers up in the air and his forelimbs up in the air, and Skitter with her combat baton and standing next to this metal guy, and that's just kind of a cool image I got in my mind's eye.
That was a great scene, and I think it really points out how Skitter's able to multitask.
Mm-hmm.
She's not only trying to deal with the people that are attacking her directly, but she recognizes that the other person there is struggling, and so she sends some bugs to try to find a vulnerability, and she
Yeah.
does.
Mm-hmm.
And so then Weld is able to get the upper hand, and then he comes over and helps her out. And so that was pretty neat how she's still in the midst of it, in the heat of battle, able to kind of split her mind a little bit and be able to still be trying to help all the combatants at the same time, while she's trying not to get killed.
Yeah, because Weld was in danger. Dude was,
Yeah, he was getting melted down, man.
yeah, and dude was, she helped us realize dude was digging for organs. And then it's all of a sudden, it's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
No, he's not indestructible.
exactly. Yeah, that was really neat the way she kept both things going.
And so we get that, oh gosh, that devastating scene where, yeah, Echidna is duplicated. Well, now it's definitely a class S situation because of the
Right.
whole multiple versions of herself. They begin to desiccate almost immediately, so they're not real. Okay, great, but they execute this maneuver where they end up capturing Alexandria and Eidolon. And then when that happens, the whole situation is definitely changed and not for the better for the heroes. Because at one point, yeah, Alexandria was swinging light poles into Echidna, and when she got stuck to the body, a legend would help cut her free with laser beams, and her strength would she could tear herself free. So as we were saying, hey, there were moments where it looked like the triumvirate working together were making a real difference, and that allowed some of the less powerful capes to focus on cleaning up the clones. But ultimately, Echidna gets the better of them. So now, as we're moving on into chapter 6, Chevalier is trying to use his cannon blade. They're shooting at the Eidolon clone, trying to catch him before he gets the full power. And he does that flickering thing. Any speculation? Is he paging in alternate realities and grabbing new versions, unhealed or undamaged versions of himself? Or is it something else? You want to speculate?
Well, that seems reasonable. I mean, and that's what the characters speculate, that it's similar to
Yeah.
Scapegoat's power, and so it makes sense. And it brings up an interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
As Echidna is making these clones, is she building up a catalog of, so like the Cauldron folks had their formulas and what, oh, if you want this, we'll use these ingredients or whatever, and they kind of had their whole spreadsheet. Is Echidna doing something similar as she's spitting out these clones and realizing, oh, this one can do that, and this is how I can make
Oh,
this happen? Is she somehow,
I think
you know,
she's.
with
I think that's alluded to in the earlier part of the chapter. Let me think. Maybe it was in her interlude where there was a couple of times where she said, "Okay, I don't want to give up this person. I wanted another clone of the Space Warper, or I could use the Regent, but maybe not in this situation." So yeah, I think there is some of that going on.
yeah, yeah. So I guess I didn't know how fine grained
Mm-hmm.
the that ability was. If it was just kind of a, oh, I can pick Regent or I can pick Skitter, or if it was like I can pick a Gru teleport version, or I can give the teleport to somebody else.
I
I don't know
see.
how like fine grained I said.
Let's see here. Interesting you could say that. I'm looking back at that first part of the statement from Megafire 7, and that may give some credence to what you're saying, where Megafire had said, I always read Echidna's power as essentially inducing alternate versions of the cape's trigger in order to give them powers. Maybe she does have some control, like you were thinking, to get out a certain type of Regent clone or a certain type of Gru clone, or maybe it's a crapshoot and she just sees what they do. This is something that we went past early on in the fight. The Vista clones worked together, and the Gru clone, both of them worked in a protective capacity. Those were both aspects of the primary person. Brian Gru is protective by nature, and we've seen where Missy is concerned about her team.
Good point. Yeah. So that is something that's carrying through on the personality side as well.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, even with some of the non-cape clones, we saw where they retained memories. They were kind of less inhibited versions of what they were cloned from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just like, oh yeah, my girlfriend used to always think of me as fat, and I'm tired of that. So the real one can be killed, but not the clone version. It's just like, what? Yeah, that's an interesting aspect of this that comes up with the kudzus.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I really gotta say I admire that the Wildbow is able to cover all this. He's given us some pretty good subtext from as far as the personalities go. Meanwhile, he's keeping track of this incredibly frenetic battle that's taking place out in somewhere in the middle of downtown Brockton Bay. The Eidolon clone is using a vacuum. He's using aerokinesis, and he's using some kind of healing. The Alexandria clone takes off after Legend. And I don't think we've ever actually talked about the fact that I don't believe Legend is indestructible. Otherwise, I can't see him flying away frantically from Alexandria.
Yeah, I think they mentioned that he didn't know what his speed limit was.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely the implication that he could die. So he's just saying, all right, well, I'm going to keep going. I know she won't be able to catch up to me. But he did say that the theoretical limit wasn't so much that he'd not be able to, that he'd top out, but that he would lose like control almost, you know, that his higher motor functions or something would start dimming out. So he's being careful not to just, you know, blast away. And then he's also kind of flying in circles so he can stay closer to the fighting and try to do something to help out.
I want to skip ahead because we don't have to get buried down into the confines of the battle itself. When this Eidolon clone drops the bomb about Cauldron, I mean, it's a malicious act. We know these clones are evil. Well, it's a malicious act on his part. I guess Wildbow had to get this data out to the capes at large some kind of way. Legend had put out this half-truth, and now we have what we know to be the rest of the story, the more actual part of the story, but it's being put out by this evil clone in a malicious way. An interesting way to get the data out at this moment and to break the spirit. It works. It breaks the spirit of the opposing force, all the capes that are gathered against Echidna.
Well, and we've seen Noel use this tactic before, right? With the Skitter clones and them spilling stuff. So I think it goes back to what you said earlier about the gamer mentality still being in there, right? Not that I'm a great gamer, but you find things that work and you keep doing them. You know, if you got too many enemies in one room, you lure them around the corner, you kill a couple at a time, and then you go back and you lure some more, and you know, you go back and heal up if you need to, and then go back. And so Noel's seen that this is mess with people's heads when there have been these revelations, and because she's there, they're part of her for a while, so she gets everything that they are. Then she's able to get them to pump this information out. And so yeah, Psycho Eidolon, as he's called in the story, is there spilling the beans. And
I mean, it was almost more devastating than any physical attack he could have laid against the capes.
Well, it definitely, it's kind of like a Muhammad Ali type thing, you know, or any of those fighters that lower their arms for a minute or whatever. It's something that messes with people in the midst of it. So
True.
if you can get somebody, that's like a classic offensive lineman thing, right? Is you get somebody thinking you're doing one thing, and then when they're wrong footed, you do the thing you really wanted to do, and then it knocks them on their butt. So I think it's a great way to catch them off guard. There was a really cool story I read a long time ago where it was about sumo wrestlers and the big tournament, and all of them are these super strong, large men, and they all train, and so they're always looking for some other advantage. And so in the story, well, and this may actually happen, but you can bring one little item with you into the ring, and it's usually some kind of thing to help you focus mentally. It might be, your dad's college ring or something a mentor gave you or whatever. And so this one guy goes into his final match, and it turns out the guy that he's fighting is a vegetarian. And so just before the match happens, he opens up his little box, and inside is a Big Mac, and he takes a bite, and the vegetarian dude just, it blows his mind, and he just blasts him out of the ring. It's no contest. So psychological warfare is definitely a powerful weapon.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, going back to when Tattletale first mentioned Cauldron, and when she started spilling the beans about the Triumvirate being involved, and when Legend came down, we got little glimpses of some of the capes who were, I think Skitter noticed one of them kind of inhaled a little bit like, and then another one was fidgeting. And so, and you may have even talked about this. So there was already this undercurrent of unease going throughout the team that was there ready to fight the capes. And then this thing from Eidolon, I keep coming back to it because it's a pretty significant moment in the battle. This just really rips open this wound, and it's effective. And then the next thing you know, the teams are no longer fighting together, and some of the capes aren't taking orders, or some of the team leaders aren't giving orders effectively. And so, yeah, he's broken their spirit. And then we get Mirrodin. Oh, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more thing. So when we started out, we ended that last chapter where Skitter and Tattletale knew Legend was probably hiding something. And Skitter said, maybe I would do the same thing. And so when you're part of a cover-up like that, then somebody takes the lead and spins a story. There's going to be people who are like, wow, I wish we had just come clean, or there'll be mixed emotions about it, right? And so when Echidna sucked in Eidolon, he probably had those emotions still going on within him. And so, this is just kind of a natural outflow from that. But it always makes it worse if somebody kind of did a cover up and tries to push stuff under the rug a little bit, or hide a little bit of stuff, and then the truth comes out. Then it's like, all right, we thought you were lying to us, but now we know you were lying to us, and we were just flat up right to our faces. So yeah, this is like checkmate almost. It's just this is dropping the chess piece into just the right place on the board, and everybody going, oh crap, now we're done.
Yeah, and we have to, I know we're ping-ponging back and forth between 5 and 6 here, but let's not forget the realization of just who Alexandria was. The rest, we knew that Director Costa Brown was Alexandria, and now all the assembled capes know. And so that's another huge grenade that's going off, and it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. So defeating Echidna is the immediate issue, and the long-term thing is going to be, my God, what's going to happen to the PRT? What's going to happen to the Cape community if and when we can defeat Echidna? So as I was going to say, Eidolon kills Mirrodin, and it's really sad. It's not even so much that he used his power on him, as he pulled a knife and jabbed it in his throat. And I think that that personal up close kill was probably also meant to send a message to the assembled forces.
Definitely. But if I can just jump back 1 second,
Sure.
Clockblocker sees it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Oh yeah.
he's
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we put the whole cauldron, everything, we put that on the back burner because we've got this on the front burner. But now the thing on the back burner is boiled over. And
Yeah.
so now we've got two fires on the stove. And so Clockblocker is basically saying we could put the one fire out, but the other one is going to keep burning. And I don't know if we can put that one out. So he just says flat out, we lost, not this
Mm-hmm.
fight. Maybe we can still win it. Won't deny it's possible, especially if Scion may be showing up. But the big picture, there's no coming back from this. And he's
Okay.
right. You know,
Let's see. Let me challenge you a little bit. Now, the other episode when Tony was here, he asked you to make a prediction about the long term where you thought the story was going to go. So I'm going to ask you about this statement that Clockblocker is making. You know, we've lost. Long term, he's seeing that the situation may not be salvageable. When it comes to the PRT specifically, what do you think happens? Give a rough prediction on what you think happens. Does the PRT survive? Does the PRT as an organization vanish? You want to spitball a little bit?
well, yeah, this is a tough one. This is
You want to percolate on that when maybe come back next episode? Or do you think you can come up with an answer now?
um I think I can come up with a bit of an answer now. So
Okay.
if you think back to Watergate,
Okay.
and before that, the American people knew that stuff happened that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't above board, and that things were probably not as white as the driven snow, the way that
Mm-hmm.
things were painted, but it wasn't flat out there. But when Watergate happened, then it was just like, oh, well, this guy was trying to make it so that he would be president forever. He was trying to make sure that, he would do whatever it took to make sure he was reelected. And that really caused a huge shift where it was like, all right, well, now we can't trust these people at all. We wondered about it, and we knew, maybe JFK was doing, seems like he's having an affair with Marilyn Monroe, but we don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's telling us, nobody's throwing it out there. But now it's like, all right, flat out, this, yeah, lied to my face, and this is the president. This is the person that's not supposed to do that.
Right.
Which is a very naive way of looking at it, but that's how things work. And ever since then, there's all sorts of talk about, oh, well, this is what's caused the fall of Western civilization, not to get overly dramatic, but
Yeah.
it erodes things, right? And then things tend to get eroded in different ways. Like right now we've got the Supreme Court, and it's like, wait, what? These guys aren't and gals aren't incorruptible like we thought they were. They're human. What the heck?
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, oh, well, we'll set up some rules, and that way it won't happen again. And everybody's like, yeah, but who enforces the rules? I mean, you're the Supreme Court. What is there going to be, like an ultra court that overlooks this? How is that even going to work? And so I think this moment is a watershed where it's just like, well, if we can't, the capes managed to slip one by us by having a cape be the head of the thing that was controlling the capes and us not even knowing. How are we ever going to trust them again? So, yeah, I think I'm foreseeing something kind of like the Wild West, where it's just in any given town, the sheriff might be a good sheriff or it might be a corrupt sheriff, and there's no telling, and everybody's out for themselves, kind of thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. We'll see if we can revisit that as we get a little further into the story. So let's leave that one out there for future review. Skitter makes this play where she gives her gun to Clockblocker. Clockblocker is really hurt because of the Shatterbird attack. she gives her gun to him, and then she moves off to confront Noel / Echidna. We don't know what's going on. I think this might be one of those unreliable narrator situations. Again, I'm not a writer, so feel free to spank me in the comments if I'm missing this. We don't see what's coming up, what she's doing while she's walking out and telling Noel, hey, I'll give myself up. I'll trade myself for Eidolon. That was she asked Noel if that deal was still in play. And once she coughs up Eidolon, she a gutsy play here. Noel charges, and Skitter tells Clockblocker via her swarm to use his power on the gun. And at that moment, she turns a bunch of spider silk into very effective razor wire.
Yeah, that one surprised me. I gotta tell the truth. Wildbow, totally didn't see this one coming. But yeah, this is forget what stories they had it in, but like the wire that's one molecule thick, that people could hide in their hair and stuff, and then could cut through anything. Was that Man-Kazin Wars?
Yeah, was that the stuff that in Ring World? No, that wasn't the stuff that held the sunblocks in Ring World together, was it? Or were you thinking something that was?
Maybe it was, yeah.
Because the what was it? The hot needle of inquiry hit one, and then it ended up dropping from that sunblock and was scouring the land inside the Ring World on the inner surface. I don't know. Could be wrong on that.
Right. The thread fell down, yeah, and was
right
cut through everything. Yeah.
Was that what you were thinking about?
I think so, yeah. But yeah, this is another one of those things where, it's like the slap and chop kind of thing. You can really visualize. Sorry.
Folks, see, this is the stuff I've known this dude for what 30, almost 40 years now, and this is the kind of stuff I've been dealing with. Slap and chop Echidna. It worked.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. But it worked. I mean, hey, great. She baited Echidna with the promise of submitting to her, taking her apart, and got her to charge her. And hidden within that swarm was the vertical spider silk. And in addition to that, while all this was going on, she had her swarm go and cover the Psycho Eidolon and got Miss Militia to pop him with a rocket launcher and turn him into spam.
Yeah. Yeah, she was all over the place with that. It's one of those things where, wow, yeah, the multitasking goes up to a whole nother level. And it's another one of those gamer type moves, right? If you're in a position where you can't win, you've got to try to trick your opponent into doing something stupid. And you set the grenade, and then you try to lure them to come chase you, and then as they get to where the grenade is, it goes off. And so pretty cool. And I love that in the midst of all this stuff going on and flying around, Skitter's trying to come up with like, well, what would Schwarzenegger say? Or what would
yeah,
flicker that?
I was just looking at that. Flicker that. Yeah, I got you. Meanwhile, we're watching the bisected Echidna try to deal with being cut in two. Yeah, Eidolon flies up. Yeah, there was that deal when Echidna had spat him out. He tried to rejoin the forces, and a couple of capes stood in his way. So there was that. Let me see here. Yeah, we're just rolling through this. We're almost at the end of the chapter. Where am I here? Yeah, I could see Echidna's body swelling, growing huge with tumorous bulges as she sought to rebuild her other half. And she was still nigh immobile. So the heroes have the offensive. They're laying into her. Weld and Wanton are conducting more rescue, which is cool. Good job, guys. Right. Skitter uses her swarm and tells the people about the core that supplies Echidna's matter. So we're trying to take advantage of the situation while she's down. And we're heading toward the end of it. And it says, we can win this fight, I mused. And this time I could believe it.
Yeah, they're getting some of the folks out of the bad half of Echidna. And so those folks are getting recovered. Folks are getting a little bit of healing. But to your point, there's definitely folks are separating into camps.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, this is really not good. The only way this works is if everybody joins in, just like an Endbringer event. It's like all of our grievances get put aside for a moment and we've got to meet the common foe. Mm-hmm. But it's just like, all right, no, we just found out about this grievance. It's very fresh. It's very real. And, maybe if you all think you're so bad, you do it on your own. Good luck. We're taking our capes and going home. So it's tough to see it. Everybody working together, they can win this.
Mm-hmm.
If there's division, the old house divided thing, right? And there's a huge divide now. So
yes, there is. And with that brings us to the end of the chapter that we're going to cover this evening. Any final thoughts, sir?
Yeah, the one thing that we kind of missed in there, I guess, was that Shatterbird showed up again.
Yes.
And, even though a lot of glass was gone, there was still enough of it around. Tecton had been doing a lot of good work, but he had so much silicon in him that, he couldn't even move. He was just trapped in his unpowered armor. And so they mentioned that Echidna had gotten so large that they didn't know that he could make a hole or an unstable area big enough to cause her problems, but you don't know. He seemed particularly effective, and losing him was pretty bad. So Shatterbird showing up really threw another monkey wrench into this whole thing, as if they needed another one. But it was just, one curveball after another. And then, Psycho Eidolon just has a giant mind blowing thing that he shares with everybody. And then that now, we're not sure if everybody's even gonna try to get along.
Yeah, because it said that one moment where the case 53s are there. She noticed via her swarm that they're starting to, as you said, separate into camps. Yeah, to be continued.
Okay.
And this brings us to the end of part 2. And with that, we will be signing off for now. Thanks for spending time with us, everyone. Join us as Andy discovers the exciting climax to Arc 19. So until next time, take care.
Yeah, as always, this has been a blast, and really enjoy Wildbow's writing, all the twists and turns and the unexpected things that come up, and hope you enjoy us and our goofy way of viewing it at times, at least my goofy way of viewing it at times. But thanks for being here, and thanks for your comments. Keep them coming. Definitely spark a lot of thoughts on our side. But we'll talk to you next time.
Thanks for joining us in this podcast. We hope you'll like, comment, and subscribe. If not, thanks for stopping by anyway, and we hope you return. Music is by the band YYNOT from their self-titled debut CD. You can find more information in the link down below. Catch you later.